of Mexi.
It is November 1st, 2020. Come one, come all, and get your good news while you can. Honestly, this has been a major month in pushing the struggle forward globally, so for at least the next 48 hours or so, please join me in basking in it. Bolivians have returned Evo Morales' Movement for Socialism party to power just a year after the US-backed right-wing coup ousted Morales, the country's first indigenous president. The US-dominated Organization of American States leveled baseless allegations of fraud against Morales in last year's election, forcing him to flee into exile. This sparked waves of indigenous-led protests across the country, including a massive general strike that shut down the country's main highways. The turnout for Luis Arce, Morales' ally, was astounding. He took 52% of the vote, followed by Carlos Meza with 31%, and right-wing Luis Camacho, an ally of the unelected Janine Áñez, got just 14% of the vote. Keep in mind, this is a mixed-member proportional electoral system where one party getting over 50% of the vote is extremely rare. Suck it, America, and suck it, Elon. Tens of thousands of Chileans took Santiago's main square in celebration on October 25th after the country overwhelmingly voted to axe and rewrite their Pinochet-era constitution, which many see as contributing to the country's social and economic inequality. Murderous right-wing dictator Augusto Pinochet was installed in a US-backed coup against democratically elected socialist Salvador Allende in 1973. 50 years later, 78% of voters opted to axe this constitution in favor of a new one to be drafted by citizens. According to Al Jazeera, many have expressed hopes that a new text will tamper the unabashedly capitalist ethos with guarantees of more equal rights to healthcare, pensions, and education. In Santiago's Plaza Italia, fireworks rose over people singing in unison while the word rebirth was beamed onto a tower above. After 49 years, former Black Panther and Black Liberation Army member Jalil Abdul Muntaqim, aka Anthony Bottom, has finally been released from prison. His release was virulently opposed by the New York Police Union as he was convicted of killing 2 police officers in Harlem. At his last parole hearing, he expressed remorse for the deaths of the officers, but he has maintained his innocence during this entire incarceration, and the details around the case were hazy at best. Innocent or not, we cannot equate the revolutionary violence of the oppressed, the people fighting for their lives, with the crushing and far more lethal slow violence of systemic racism and the ongoing widespread state-sanctioned murder of racialized minorities at the hands of the police. Speaking of, members of Portland City Council met in September to discuss legislation outlawing the use of facial recognition technology, which would bar police from using it to unmask protesters, as well as bar companies and organizations from using it to identify people. During the meeting, a local activist, Christopher Howell, announced that he's developing facial recognition software to use on Portland's police department, since they aren't identifying themselves to the public, and they were even being encouraged by higher-ups to tape over their names during the height of protests this summer. Although Portland's mayor said the project was a little creepy, the law would not apply to individuals, meaning activists can continue developing the technology. Howell is a lifelong activist and protester and got the idea after being tear-gassed by cops in a midday protest in June. He's also not alone. Activists around the world are turning this process around and developing tools that can unmask the people committing unspeakable violence with impunity. One researcher said, "We're now approaching the technological threshold where the little guys can do it to the big guys." On October 7th, an Athens court found Greece's openly fascist Golden Dawn party guilty of running a criminal organization after a 5-year trial. Upper party members were handed sentences ranging from 5 to 13 years in prison, and a life sentence was given to the murderer of beloved anti-fascist activist, anarchist, and hip-hop artist Pavlos Fyssas. The day of the verdict, 20,000 Greek anti-fascists rallied outside the courthouse waving banners reading "Nazis out" and chanting "Pavlos lives, crush the Nazis," while Italian resistance song Bella Ciao blared in the background. As Greek leftists have noted, the battle against fascism is not won in the courts alone. It requires constant vigilance in workplaces, schools, and in the streets. As a statement from the Greek leftist radio show and counter-information collective Radio Fragmata says, "We plead not to allow the state and its trickery to measure the distance and victories of our struggles. Solidarity, comrades." Trump told the Proud Boys, the violent neo-fascist street gang, to stand back and stand by. And boy, are they ever. The wannabe fascists were left seething as the Proud Boys hashtag was hijacked in the name of gay pride. This glorious reclamation was initiated by actor and gay rights activist George Takei. In the following days, thousands of proud gay chads took to social media using the hashtag, posting joyful images of love, affection, hope, and defiance. The Proud Boys, having been kicked off Twitter in 2018 for violating the terms of service, took to an alternative social media app popular with conservatives where they spewed homophobic hate speech and pathetically whined into the void. But lads, nobody hears ya, and nobody cares.
Oh my.
Students at Columbia University in New York City voted overwhelmingly in support of BDS at a university referendum. The referendum asked students if the university should divest its stocks, funds, and endowment from companies that profit from or engage in the state of Israel's actions towards Palestinians, which fall under the United Nations International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid. 61% of the undergraduate body responded yes to this statement. More work is to be done, however, as the university's president and notable enlightened centrist Lee Bollinger has maintained his opposition to the boycott. Even though he will likely block change to the university's policy at this time, this reflects the rapidly shifting support away from Israel and towards Palestinian liberation, especially among youth. In Italy, as of October 1st, the drugs necessary for hormone replacement therapy are now free for trans people. Italians who have decided to transition to attain the body that most reflects their gender identity will be able to enter any pharmacy with the appropriate medical prescription, receive the drugs, and the national health system will reimburse the cost. Italian LGBTQ organizations are calling this a revolution. This is not only because of the newfound accessibility of the drugs, but because for the first time the Italian state has acknowledged the word transgender and the existence of trans people in official legislation. Over 400 unionized nurses at Bacchus Hospital in Connecticut carried out a 2-day strike this month, reaching a tentative 4-year contract just 3 days later, with the nurses gaining improvements in staffing levels and wages and in access to adequate supplies of PPE. The ineptitude of neoliberal capitalist approaches to healthcare has been laid bare during this pandemic, with nursing shortages being one key component. AFT National President Randy Weingarten said this is a strike not only for issues around wages, but also for everyday respect for nurses in the middle of a pandemic. Nurses put their lives on the line every day to care for patients. Federal and state legislators and representatives of other unions stood in solidarity with the striking nurses. With the U.S. presidential election mere days away, mass anxiety is at an all-time high. Trump's constant effort to delegitimize mail-in ballots with baseless claims of mass voter fraud and his appointment of arch-conservative sycophant Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court has stoked fear that the orange wannabe fascists will steal the election. But unions across America are organizing to ensure a peaceful transition of power. On October 8th, the Rochester Central Labour Council passed a resolution which called on the national AFL-CIO, all of its affiliate unions, and all other labor organizations in the United States of America to prepare for and enact a general strike of all working people if necessary to ensure a peaceful transition of power as a result of the 2020 presidential elections. A few nights later, the Seattle Educators Association passed a resolution to call an emergency meeting within a week of the election to determine whether to carry out an emergency work stoppage. Now, bourgeois elections are neither free nor fair, and we should be holding general strikes anyway, but it's good to know that workers will be mobilized should the worst case occur. Okay, guys, there's a feminist refugee rescue ship named after famous anarchist Louise Michel defying Fortress Europe in the Mediterranean. Fucking rad. Activists on board started in the Juventa ship, which saved around 14,000 lives during 16 missions between 2016 and 2017. However, Italian far-right Prime Minister Matteo Salvini got the Secret Service involved. The ship was spied on and impounded, and the crew were accused of working with human traffickers, although no charges have been made. Randomly, Banksy reached out and offered to buy them a new ship, which they thought was a hoax until it wasn't. And so they're back on the waters, having saved hundreds of people's lives already. In solidarity with the Mi'kmaq fishers whose constitutionally protected livelihoods are under assault from white supremacist terrorists in Nova Scotia, many restaurants in the province are boycotting settler-trapped lobster and have taken lobster off their menus entirely. Restaurant owners have stated that lobster will remain off the menu as long as settler violence against Indigenous peoples continues. After settler arsonists destroyed a Mi'kmaq lobster pound, leaving one man with life-threatening injuries, thousands of people rallied in Halifax in support of the Mi'kmaq Nation and their constitutionally protected rights to carry out their traditional fishing practices. The Department of Fisheries is now negotiating with the nation to reach a resolution that upholds their treaty rights. Comrades, if you have good news from your town, region, city, country, and if that news is from the current month, please send your stories to veganvanguardpodcast@gmail.com or at me at MexiYT on Twitter. Thank you to Javi for the positive news jams. Thank you to Halcyon for the positive news background. Thank you to Tristan, as always, for editing this video. And thank you to my patrons who make the show possible. Very special shout out to Hans Jurgen, Aziz, Cynthia, and Anarcho Hyrax. If you could spare a few dollars, please consider supporting me monthly on Patreon or giving me a one-time donation via PayPal. For $2 per month, you'll get access to the Total Liberation server where myself, Mad Blender, and Catherine host monthly political discussions. Check out my podcast at veganvanguardpodcast.com. If you like this video, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in another video.
Sometimes